The dull hum of medical equipment filled the cramped medbay as I adjusted the settings on the diagnostic scanner. Another late shift at the Galactic Emergency Response Station, and I was the only human medic on duty. Most nights were quiet, just the occasional minor injury from the maintenance crews or a spacer with radiation sickness. But tonight felt different somehow. I was just about to start my hourly equipment check when the emergency doors hissed open. The sight made my heart skip a beat. A young Zenthian girl stumbled in, her iridescent scales dulled with illness, and her third eye completely swollen shut. She couldn't have been more than 14 in human years. Behind her, two elderly Zenthians, presumably her grandparents, watched nervously from the doorway but didn't enter. "Please," she whispered in broken universal standard. The other medical stations, they wouldn't. She swayed dangerously, and I rushed forward to catch her before she could collapse. I'd seen this before. Despite the Galactic Union's anti-discrimination laws, many alien medical facilities still refused to treat Zenthians, an old prejudice from the Resource Wars, when their people had been on the opposite side. But I hadn't spent 6 years studying xenobiology and taking the Hippocratic Oath just to turn away a child in need. "I've got you," I assured her, helping her onto the examination table. "Can you tell me your symptoms?" The diagnostic scanner hummed to life as I ran it over her trembling form. Her grandparents remained in the doorway, mandibles clicking anxiously. The scanner's results made my blood run cold. Severe neural inflammation, dangerous fever, and spreading infection, classic signs of stellar plague. Left untreated, it could be fatal within days. The worst part? The cure was simple and readily available, but most non-human facilities didn't stock human-developed medications. Why didn't they help her? The grandmother finally spoke, her translator struggling with the emotion in her voice. "We visited 3 stations before yours." I didn't have the heart to tell them the ugly truth, that despite all our supposed progress, some wounds from the old wars still hadn't healed. Instead, I focused on what I could do right now, here in this moment. "The important thing is that you're here now," I said, already preparing the treatment protocol, "and you're going to be just fine." I directed this last part to the girl, whose multiple eyes had begun to glaze over from the fever. As I worked, I couldn't help but think about how much had changed since humans first joined the Galactic Union. We were the newcomers, the upstarts, often looked down upon by the older species. But maybe that's exactly why we were different. We hadn't been around long enough to learn who we were supposed to hate. The girl's temperature was spiking dangerously high. I knew the next few hours would be critical, and I had no intention of leaving her side. Her grandparents finally entered the med bay fully, their protective instincts apparently overriding their hesitation. As they watched me work, I could sense their initial distrust giving way to something else. Hope, maybe, or the universal recognition of compassion that transcends species. What I didn't know then was that this night would change everything, not just for this young Zenthian and her family, but for the entire station. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness, even if those changes come with their own complications. But that's a story for another time, because right now I had a patient who needed me, and that's all that mattered. The next few hours tested every bit of my medical training and human endurance. The young Zenthian's fever continued to climb despite the initial treatment, her iridescent scales shifting from their natural blue to an alarming shade of purple. Her grandparents huddled together in the corner of the med bay, whispering prayers in their native tongue that my translator couldn't quite catch. I administered another dose of antiviral medication, specifically designed for xenological compatibility. It was a controversial treatment, developed by human scientists after the Resource Wars as a gesture of peace. Most alien medical facilities refused to stock it out of pride or lingering prejudice, but I'd always made sure our small station kept a good supply. Right now, it was her best chance. As I monitored her vitals, the grandmother finally approached me. Her name was too complex for my translator to handle, but she told me to call her Sarah. During the wars, she began hesitantly, my daughter, the child's mother, was a medical officer. She believed, like you, that healing should know no boundaries. Her voice cracked slightly. She died trying to treat humans in the neutral zone. The revelation hit me like a meteor strike. I'd studied the history of the neutral zone massacres, but hearing a personal account made it all more real. What happened to her parents? I asked softly, glancing at the young patient whose name I still didn't know. Both lost in the last wave of conflicts, Sarah replied, her outer membrane clouding with grief. We're all she has left. When she became ill, we feared history would repeat itself, that no one would help her because of what we are. The monitoring equipment beeped insistently, drawing my attention back to my patient. Her neural readings were becoming erratic, a dangerous sign in Zenthian physiology. I quickly prepared a stabilizing agent, my mind racing through everything I knew about their unique biological systems. Your daughter, I said while working, she must have been incredibly brave. The grandmother's antennae twitched in surprise at my words. She understood what I understand, that the only way forward is together, that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about trust. Just then, the station's communication system crackled to life. Emergency Protocol Alpha 7 initiated. All non-essential personnel must evacuate immediately. Repeat, Emergency Protocol Alpha 7 initiated. My heart sank. Alpha 7 meant a potential outbreak situation. Someone must have reported treating a stellar plague case, and now station security would be locking down all medical facilities. Standard procedure would be to transfer any high-risk patients to the main quarantine facility in the Centauri system. But I knew what that would mean for my patient. The quarantine facility was run by the old guard, those who still clung to wartime prejudices. A young Zenthian would be placed last on their priority list, if they accepted her at all. The girl's third eye fluttered open briefly, focusing on me with surprising clarity despite her fever. Don't let them take me, she managed to whisper before slipping back into unconsciousness. I looked at her grandparents, seeing the same fear in their eyes that must have been in mine. The evacuation alarm continued to blare, and I could hear movement in the corridors outside, security teams preparing to sweep the station. I had maybe 10 minutes to make a decision that could cost me my medical license, my career, and possibly my freedom. But as I looked at my patient, this child who had already lost so much to hatred and prejudice, I knew there was only one choice I could live with. I just hoped I could live with the consequences of what I was about to do. The evacuation alarm's wailing seemed to grow more urgent with each passing second. I quickly dimmed the medbay's lights and activated the emergency privacy protocols, a feature normally used during sensitive procedures. It wouldn't fool security for long, but it might buy us precious minutes. Listen carefully, I told Sarah and her husband, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. There's a maintenance access tunnel behind the supply cabinet. It connects to the old emergency shuttle bay from before the station's renovation. Almost everyone's forgotten it exists. I started gathering essential medical supplies, my hands moving with practiced efficiency. Sarah's husband spoke for the first time, his translator struggling with his gravelly voice. Why would you risk this for us? Your own people will punish you. I continued packing while I answered, selecting medications and portable monitoring equipment. Because I'm tired of watching history repeat itself. Because your granddaughter deserves to live without paying for a war that ended before she was born. And because sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the wrong rules. The sound of boots in the corridor made us all freeze. The security team was getting closer. I quickly transferred the girl onto a portable medical bed, trying not to disturb the tubes and monitors keeping her stable. Her fever had dropped slightly, but she was far from out of danger. Help me with this, I whispered, gesturing to the supply cabinet. Together, Sarah and her husband silently moved it aside, revealing the access panel I'd mentioned. Years of working late shifts had taught me every forgotten corner of this station, and now that knowledge might save all our lives. Just as I finished inputting the override code for the panel, my personal communicator buzzed. It was the station chief, medical officer, report status of any cases matching Protocol Alpha 7 parameters. I took a deep breath. Once I failed to respond, there would be no going back. I removed my communicator and placed it on the desk, then helped guide the hover stretcher into the narrow maintenance tunnel. The girls' grandparents followed, their tall frames having to stoop in the confined space. The tunnel was dark and cramped, thick with decades of dust. We moved as quickly as we dared, every sound seeming impossibly loud in the enclosed space. The girl's condition monitor beeped softly, each sound both reassuring and terrifying. Proof she was still fighting, but also a potential beacon to anyone searching for us. After what felt like hours but must have been minutes, we reached the old shuttle bay. It was exactly as I'd hoped, forgotten but intact. A single emergency shuttle sat there, an older model but still perfectly functional. They didn't decommission these things, they just forgot about them. Just as I started powering up the shuttle's systems, the girl's vital signs suddenly spiked. Her body began to convulse, her scales flashing with distress patterns. This was the critical phase of stellar plague, the moment when patients either turned the corner or... I couldn't finish that thought. I had to stabilize her now, but the sound of distant alarms told me security had discovered our absence. They would be checking all potential escape routes, including this supposedly abandoned bay. Time was running out, and I had to make an impossible choice: risk moving her in this condition or stay and treat her, knowing we'd certainly be caught. The girl's third eye opened again, all of its facets glowing with fever-bright intensity. She reached out with a trembling hand and grasped my arm. What happened next would change everything I thought I knew about Zenthians, about the war, and about the true nature of the illness I was treating. As the young Zenthian's hand gripped my arm, a strange sensation washed over me, like static electricity but somehow deeper, reaching into my mind. Suddenly, I wasn't just seeing her symptoms. I was feeling them. The burning fever, the neural inflammation, the overwhelming sense of foreign presence trying to take control. This wasn't just stellar plague. It was something else entirely. Through this unexpected connection, fragmented images flashed through my consciousness. Secret research facilities, experiments performed on Zenthian children, and a manufactured virus designed not just to sicken, but to suppress something. Something the war had been fought to contain. She's showing you, isn't she? Sarah's voice trembled, the truth about why they really won't treat our children. Her husband placed a steadying hand on her shoulder as she continued. The plague isn't a natural illness. It's what happens when they try to suppress our healing gift. The same gift that let my daughter save so many humans during the war. The pieces started falling into place. Why other medical facilities turned them away. Why the station initiated such an extreme quarantine protocol for a supposedly common illness. They weren't afraid of the plague spreading. They were afraid of the truth spreading. A loud clang echoed through the shuttle bay, followed by the sound of boots on metal. Security had found us. The girl's grip on my arm tightened, and suddenly I understood what I had to do. The medical knowledge flowing between us showed me exactly how to stabilize her condition, not by fighting the fever, but by helping her body embrace the changes it was going through. "We have about 2 minutes," I said, quickly adjusting her medication doses. "But there's something you haven't told me." I looked at Sarah and her husband. "This isn't just about saving one child, is it? There are others." The old Zenthian's outer membrane rippled with emotion. A whole colony of children, hidden in the outer rim, all showing signs of the gift, all at risk of being quarantined if discovered. We've been trying to reach them, to teach them how to control their abilities before the symptoms appear. But the security team's voices were getting closer. I could hear them methodically checking each corridor, branching off from the shuttle bay. The girl's vital signs were finally stabilizing, but moving her now would still be risky. Through our lingering connection, I felt her determination. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore. She was fighting for all of them, the hidden children, the future of her people, and the chance to heal the rifts that the war had created. The shuttle's systems were ready, but the bay doors would make noise when they opened. Security would know exactly where we were, and even if we managed to launch, the station's defense systems would lock onto us within seconds. Unless I remembered something from my emergency response training, a procedure so rarely used that it might as well have been forgotten. Every medical station had a protocol for rapidly evacuating critical patients during a catastrophic system failure. If executed correctly, it would temporarily disable all security measures as a failsafe. But triggering it would require someone to stay behind and input the commands manually. Someone with medical authorization. Someone human. The girl's third eye focused on me again, and I knew she understood what I was considering. Her grip on my arm loosened, and in that final moment of connection, she shared one last vision. A possible future where humans and Zenthians worked together openly, using their combined abilities to heal not just bodies, but the deep wounds that divided their peoples. The security team was almost upon us. I had seconds to make my decision, and as I looked at this brave young girl and her desperate grandparents, I realized that sometimes the hardest choices are also the clearest. I sprinted to the bay's control panel, my fingers flying over the emergency protocols. "Get in the shuttle," I ordered, not looking back. "When the systems go dark, you'll have exactly 45 seconds before the backup generators kick in. The evacuation protocol will force all bay doors open. It's hardwired into the station's original design. They can't override it." "But you'll be arrested," Sarah protested, even as her husband guided the hover stretcher toward the shuttle. "They'll revoke your medical license, maybe worse." I managed a grim smile. "Can't revoke what I've already resigned." My fingers danced across the console, entering my final command, a formal resignation letter, along with a data burst containing evidence of every Zenthian turned away from medical care in the past 5 years. I've been keeping records, waiting for the right moment. The station's public news feeds would light up with the information the moment we triggered the evacuation protocol. The security team was at the bay's main door now, cutting through the locks. I heard the girl's weak voice from the shuttle. "Take my gift, please." Her hand reached out, glowing faintly with that strange energy I'd felt before. In that moment, I made a choice that would change everything. I ran to her, took her hand, and accepted whatever she was offering. The sensation was like lightning through my nervous system, but somehow it didn't hurt. Knowledge and power flooded through me, the true heritage of her people, not as warriors or enemies, but as healers of the deepest wounds in body and soul. The security door burst open. Without hesitating, I slammed the emergency override. The station plunged into darkness, warning klaxons blaring. I felt the girl's gift surge within me and instinctively threw up my hands. A barrier of pure healing energy erupted between us and the security team, its glow illuminating their shocked faces. "Go," I shouted to Sarah and her husband. "Get her to the others. Teach them. And when you're ready, when they're all ready, come back. The truth won't stay hidden forever." The shuttle's engines roared to life. Through the spreading chaos, I heard Sarah's final words through the comm. "Your gift will protect you now. You're one of us, the first human to carry our healing power. They won't dare harm you once they realize what that means." As the shuttle lifted off, I maintained the barrier, watching the security team's weapons fall uselessly from their hands as the healing energy touched them. They weren't just seeing a fugitive medic anymore. They were witnessing something their superiors had tried to keep hidden for generations. Something that proved everything they'd been taught about Zenthians was a lie. The station chief arrived just as the shuttle cleared the bay doors, his face pale with recognition. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered, but I did know. Through the gift now flowing in my veins, I understood exactly what this meant. The girl hadn't just given me her healing power. She made me living proof that humans and Zenthians were never meant to be enemies. We were meant to share this gift, to heal together. And as I stood there, glowing with borrowed power, while alarms blared and the station's authorities scrambled to contain their crumbling lies, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best medicine isn't the kind you keep in a medbay. Sometimes it's the truth, painful and powerful, breaking free after generations of suppression. The real healing was just beginning.